Did we do it? I think we did it. Push the buttons right to get it started. On a Monday, week number 3 of the program. Little new music and everything. I like how we're starting off this morning. Welcome in. Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent. Monday, May 16th. Oh, and this is a perfect way to start as well. Look at this guy. With the shades, with the hat, on the road. Our buddy Trey Dyson joining us on the road.
Yes, sir.
First time we're going fully mobile. We're going to see if this thing works out. Trey, does that mean you're starting out hearing us? And I can hear you too, I think. Oh, so close.
How am I coming in right now?
Oh, loud and clear, sir.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Excellent. Things are going well. That's a good start from
a good start from a tech
start for a Monday.
Yes, it is, for sure. What kind of Monday are you off to this morning, sir?
Excellent Monday. I was able to go home. And Columbia is still my home. And so the family's living there. So I try to go home as much as I can. It's also a way to kind of kill two birds with one stone for recruiting. I was at the Blythewood Boiling Springs game over the weekend, checking in on my old stomping grounds and also checking out some players. So that was good. Netflix added Happy Gilmore to the list.
Okay.
So that, a great start for me personally and hopefully for our team.
Very nice. Speaking of your team, North Greenville University, Division II playoffs announced last night. Everybody pleased with how it came out?
Yeah, it's kind of what we expected. It's kind of weird the way that in Division II baseball, there are it's not like D1 where you have the top 8 national seeds. Everything is done based on a regional basis. And so for our region, the Southeast region, there's 7 teams that make a regional. And then you rank those teams 1 through 7. We were if there was a national seed or a top national seed, I think we would have got it. We were ranked number 1 by most everyone, I think. So we're the number 1 seed in our regional. There's 2 regionals in our region. Whoever wins the regionals square off in a super regional, much like Division I. And then whoever wins that goes to Cary, North Carolina, which is home of the D2 College World Series.
Okay, you lost me there for a second. You said 2 regionals in your region?
Yes.
Please explain.
So we are a host of a regional that includes UNC Pembroke and Lenoir-Rhyne, 2 really good programs in North Carolina. In the other bracket of our region,
4 teams, right?
There's 4 teams.
Okay.
And Wingate, the defending national champs, the ones who knocked us out last year, they are hosting another regional with Columbus State, which is a great team, Belmont Abbey, a great team, and Young Harris, which actually just won the Peach Belt Conference tournament. So those whoever wins their regional will square off against whoever wins our regional for a chance to go to the World Series.
Beautiful. Breaking it down from the grassroots there on the road. Former Gamecock baseball standout Trey Dyson, North Greenville assistant coach right now. So that's the Division II outlook. We see you guys weighing in this morning. Jason, great to see you. You're right. Tim Hill, UFA. Hello, he says. Craig's in on a hey, RL as well. Let's get into some of the larger headlines of the weekend, Trey. We'll start with Gamecock baseball, if you're good from that.
Yeah.
Carolina takes 2 out of 3 from Kentucky, does miss out on the chance to sweep them yesterday. Very impressive wins, decisive wins to start the week. They ended up winning 7-0 on Saturday. Great outing from Noah Hall there. 11-3 was the score Friday. They lose yesterday, though, 7-1. The RPI now is 69, and the Gamecocks are 26-24 overall, 12-15 in the SEC. What do you make of the weekend and where Carolina sits at this point, Trey?
Well, another good weekend at home for the Gamecocks. Things are really going their way, and they've kind of been going their way for them at home this year. You win those first 2 games, and then you're feeling really good with Will Sanders on the mound. But then, just for whatever reason, it just didn't work out like and I guess that can happen sometimes. But if you want to make the postseason, if you're the Gamecocks, that's a game that you got to win. You got to win that game, and just didn't go their way. So, I really don't know what to say. Baseball's just it's such a weird game sometimes where you can be such a great team and teams will come up and bite you in the butt when you least expect it. That's why we talk about it all the time, at least where I'm at, in North Greenville. You have to win every single day, and it's easier said than done, but it's got to be like a killer instinct, and you got to have that competitive fire every single day with everything you're doing, or else it's gonna.
Oh, we had him so bright and clear for as long as we did. It was a good run, especially in between Columbia and Greenville. Looks like we might have had a technical glitch there with Trey, but we are set to get him back on kind of full time at 11 or so when he gets all set and off the road. I was just impressed that we could get him at all for a little bit there on the road. 21st century roving reporter, our Trey Dyson. If you're checking out the video portion of this podcast on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, you can see the scroll we got going here to really break down college baseball for you. The Carolina scores over the weekend, the Clemson scores over the weekend. They dropped 2 out of 3 at Virginia. That last game played late last night. Saturday's games canceled because of rain, so pushed back to a doubleheader, a day-night doubleheader yesterday, and Virginia winning that game number 3 and taking the series there. Clemson's RPI, though, is just fine, even though the ACC record is no good at 10-16, but their RPI is number 22. So it's pretty apparent. It seems pretty apparent that they're going to make the NCAA tournament. Helps them out as well that the ACC actually, from what I saw today, WarrenNolan.com is the place I go to get the college baseball breakdown from an RPI standpoint. They actually have the ACC as a conference number 1 over the SEC. It's a little bit of a head scratcher when you look at the top of the rankings, but I think it's just from a 1 through 14 kind of deal, and especially when you have the defending national champs in Mississippi State from the SEC with a 100 plus. I think they're 105 RPI now. They've lost a bunch of games or series in a row. It might be helping the ACC's cause in that one, but it got a bunch of RPI numbers written down. Again, the Gamecocks number 69. That's no good when it comes to NCAA tournament projections and at-large kind of deal. But you got Mississippi State's in there at 105, Arizona State at 90. There's Southern Cal. I didn't even put them in. I think they're like 130, just to throw some notable college baseball programs out there for an example that it's not given, man. You got to go and be good every year. That uniform does not win you any games. Past titles don't win you any games. And there is more parity in college baseball than there's ever been. Having said that, I think a lot of Gamecock fans just kind of bristled up real quick and say, well, that's no excuse. And you're absolutely right. And to have the program this is not a 1-year lull, I think is the very rational, logical Carolina take. This is what the program has become here in the last, I don't know how many years you can go. I guess since maybe the first year or two of Chad Holbrook, they were really close playing at North Carolina in a super regional, going to the College World Series. And I know the first year, Mark Kingston, they were 1 game away at Arkansas from going to the College World Series. Oklahoma State did come to Carolina for a super regional in the Holbrook era as well. So it's not like there haven't been opportunities. I'm not trying to say that it's every single year, but compared to what it was in the 2000s to 2012, for sure. 2000 to 2012 was a dominant run, no doubt. But there was very little of what's going on right now. Talking about late May, handful of games left. Here's what you got to do to be considered for the NCAA tournament. That was never it. It was, all right, is South Carolina going to be one of those top 8 national seeds? Or now they've expanded it out to top 16 seeds where you're going to host a region for sure, likely host that next round like Trey was talking about on your way to the College World Series, which the numbers are ridiculous in college baseball. If you play at home if you earn one of those hosting, you earn the right to host the regional and then the super regional, your odds, it's somewhere in the high 60s to 70%, I think, most of the time those guys go on to the College World Series. It's very difficult to do on the road. And baseball plays out that way, right? And South Carolina just has not put itself in that position very frequently here in the last several years. And that is the concern with the program at large right now. And you look at the numbers too, going through some of these RPIs, number of conference losses versus number of overall losses. The fact that the Gamecocks have 9 non-conference losses this year, 9 out of conference. You lose 15 in the SEC, that's never anything to hold your head about, right? The numbers bear themselves out in conference play. If you go 15-15 in the regular season in the SEC, typically you make the NCAA tournament. Even if you go 14-16, typically you make the NCAA tournament. But also typically you don't lose as many games as this year's team has lost in non-conference play. And you want to tell me that Clemson and Texas are on the schedule? I get that. But they should be. I mean, especially Clemson, that's always the deal for South Carolina. Adding Texas to the mix, I think, has been good for the game and good for both programs. Texas was number 1 when Carolina took 2 out of 3 from them earlier on this year. They have now dropped. I think they're number 18 in the RPI at last check. Texas A&M has really shot up here recently, speaking of that kind of school. First year under Jim Schlossnagle. And this is what I really want to get to, and I'll get Trey's take on this from a college baseball standpoint. Let me see some of your comments in here. Anthony weighing in this morning, just saying, running a little late today. Anthony, we'll give you a pass. And then the question, does South Carolina make a change at head coach? Well, I mean, this is the evaluation process, I feel like. It's not just about this year, right? Not just about last year getting able to host a regional as a 2 seed and then watching it not go well, winning the first game against Virginia and then losing to Old Dominion and Virginia. Old Dominion getting out of that one. Actually, Virginia coming up with the upset to get out of the regional and then moving on. But having the chance at home to be able to advance didn't happen. That's also something relatively new. We didn't see that under Ray Tanner. Hardly ever, right? 2000 super regionals, maybe the lone exception that I can remember off the top of my head. But you guys seen this trend, what college baseball is doing now? I guess I shouldn't say college baseball, but talking about the RPI numbers, how important that is to get into the NCAA tournament. And Texas A&M, I think, saw it specifically. They missed out on a chance to sweep the Gamecocks, and their RPI drop went from like 12 to 24, something crazy, coming off just one loss on a Sunday. And they still took 2 out of 3 in the series and the whole thing, but just the way that the college baseball RPI works. And so now this has led, I mentioned Texas A&M last week. You guys probably saw this. They just canceled a game in the midweek. They had another big series coming up. I mean, that's what midweek games are. It was against Incarnate Word, though, a small school out in Texas, and a terrible RPI. And Jim Schlossnagle didn't beat around the bush, their head coach. He's like, oh, I'm going to be honest. It didn't help us to play that game. It wasn't going to help us. It didn't make sense for Texas A&M to play the game, so they just canceled it. There's some other games out there that this has happened to, but usually there is at least the perception, that the field was a little wet from rain the night before, or some kind of relatively valid excuse. I can't believe we've gotten into the place in college baseball where you basically defer a game. You say, nah, I know it was on the schedule, but it's not going to help us, so we're not going to play it. And the reaction I've seen has been, well, we get it. I think Mark Kingston was asked about it after the game because Carolina plays Charlotte this week, or scheduled to play Charlotte on Tuesday, right? Tomorrow. And then at Florida, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Clearly, you got a game on Tuesday with a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series looming. It's not going to help how you set things up for the weekend. If you have the option to have a game or not have a game, any coach ever would say, let's not have a game and use pitchers on a Tuesday when we got a game on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And those are massively important games. So Texas A&M was in that place and they just canceled theirs, which from a competitive standpoint, like I get it. You look at paper, you look at spreadsheet, you say this would not be good. If you have the option to cancel it, cancel it. And apparently they did. But from a competitive standpoint, what are we doing? How is that the system? How is that allowed? I mean, something's got to be put into place so this does not just become the trend, right? Otherwise, why put these games on the schedule? Why even pretend that you're going to play them? I mean, and then does the opposing team, like Charlotte and South Carolina, Charlotte's RPI, I think we got it somewhere on the ticker here, somewhere around 90 or so, I think, and won't really drag Carolina down, obviously, if they win the game. But the Gamecocks have to mount as many wins right now as they can. Texas A&M in a much better position, much more favorable position, and their position is more like, hey, we beat Incarnate Word. It's not really going to help our resume. The only thing that can happen is to hurt our program right now. First of all, depleting the pitching staff going into an SEC series. And secondly, you got the chance of losing the game. So it was Schlossnagel and his former assistant, I think. He just calls him up, says that we're not going to play the game. And Mark Kingston last night, the Carolina coach, was asked about the possibility of that, or just basically presented with, hey, this is happening out there. And he says, I think he said, that's not going to happen with this game. But he understands that if you're in charge of the program out there, you got to do what's best for your program. And I get that too from a logical perspective. But the fan/competitor part of me says, wait a second, that can't be how you set it up, right? That's just a terrible message to send almost everyone. Sending the opposing team, hey, you're not good enough for us to play you right now. Well, we know you're on the schedule, but that commitment means nothing to us. Sorry. I mean, maybe they pay them anyway. I don't think that's how it works necessarily in college baseball like it does in college football, where teams get paid a bunch of money to come play. Smaller schools get paid a bunch of money to come play the bigger schools. Maybe in baseball it works in a much smaller way, but I don't even think so. But it's just something that is mind-boggling a little bit. I guess it can't be a little mind-boggling. It is completely mind-boggling to me that you can just cancel games at the end of the schedule because it doesn't make sense for your team. So I hope college baseball gets a handle on this before it continues. Clearly, something needs to be done about it just from a competitive standpoint. You got a game on your schedule. You're supposed to play the game. That's what the schedule is. If you're going to be quicker to rain it out and the whole thing, that's always happened, right? And I understand the baseball season is a little bit more condensed now. They pushed it back a little bit to try to make it more fair for teams in northern states. Maybe the best way to put that in non-warm weather states where you just can't do as much outside earlier on in the year. I think that was the right thing to do for those teams. Got to try to broaden it out, right? Can't just be California and Florida and Texas and the SEC states, the southeastern states that are good at college baseball. That's not good for the game to grow at large. I understand that. But man, if the result is that programs in position of power are just going to cancel non-conference games towards the end of the year, you got to do something about that. Absolutely got to change that. So I'm interested to hear Trey's take on that, being an old school player and that never having happened really before this year. And then also now being an assistant coach and understanding you do have to do what's best for your program and put it in the best position for the postseason and all that stuff. So we'll get that when Trey pops back on with us somewhere around 11 or so this morning. Wanted to also give you a couple of other takes. Beamer ball. You guys hear about this? Shane Beamer, Gamecock head coach, and Carolina athletics at large putting on the Beamer Ball over the weekend at Williams-Brice Stadium on the field, about 1,000 people. And it was something, man. First of all, I don't know if other programs have ever done this. Has it ever been done? I mean, can you imagine a Will Muschamp or Steve Spurrier-like event like this? I can't fathom. I guess maybe from the Will Muschamp standpoint, I know they've had events to kind of celebrate recruiting and the whole thing, and clearly you got to do things for your fans and fundraisers, and or to appreciate boosters, have an opportunity to raise some more money. But a ball like this, so this was, I didn't know what to expect going in this thing, and went and met my parents, and they had a nice time. Longtime Gamecock fans. So that's kind of my connection to this at all. Otherwise, I can't tell you the last time I went to anything like this at all. A wedding reception would be maybe how I could put it best. People got dressed up. There was a dance floor, a band, great food, drinks served. But it was on the field at Williams-Brice Stadium, which was, I mean, an immaculate shape. And every time I walk on that field, I always get the same, like my body does something. My starting from my feet, when I'm touching the ground, it's just like I have to look down. Like, this is really grass. This is just immaculately manicured and always in great shape. And the grounds crew there deserves a ton of credit. Always done a great job with it. Over at Founders Park as well, the whole Carolina crew there. Kudos to those guys. But then to have it set up to where it was tables all around, and man, it was something for sure. And had fireworks at the end, and the live music, like I mentioned, the dance floor and the whole thing. And one of the most notable parts was it was kind of like a first dance-ish thing for a wedding, right? So they have an auction, and people pay some big time money to go play golf with Shane Beamer, for instance. That was one of the things. But after that's over, then it moves to the more dancing heavy portion of the evening. And this is kind of like a first dance at a wedding is the only way I can, only analogy I can give you out there. They put a video up on the board, and it's Shane Beamer and his wife, Emily, taking dance lessons to learn how to shag so they can show it off here at the Beamer Ball. You guys ever had dance lessons? This brought back not bad memories, totally, but certainly awkward. I feel like I'm a bad dancer. Had dance lessons with my wife before our wedding. Shag lessons. I think it was before our wedding. Maybe it was right after, actually. Maybe it was a wedding present or engagement present. That's all kind of thrown together. I've been married for 10 years now, so apologize for not getting those exactly right, but it's a bit of a blur 3 kids later, 10 years ago. Didn't write it down in my diary. Didn't check that. Maybe I'll have to go back and check the diary. But definitely took shag lessons in Columbia, and I can identify, I think, with at least the way Shane came off in the dance lesson stuff. I don't know if USC has put the video out, or I assume they definitely will. Maybe they'll put it together with the actual dance at the Beamer Ball, and then some post dance analysis. But yeah, being a sports guy like Shane obviously is, and I don't think he had too much background, too much familiarity with the old shag dancing, the official dance of the state of South Carolina, by the way, if you're unfamiliar. The beach music is a big thing, and the shag is, I think, a derivative of the jitterbug, if you're a dance nerd, is what I've been told. This was actually coming from my grandmother, I think, that was a big dancer back in her day, and that was one of the big popular dances, I think, from her childhood, early adulthood, maybe. And so it's kind of a derivative of that. I don't know. My brother-in-law puts it best. He's like, yeah, it's like running in place. I don't know. I just go out there and run in place, and you kick, and then you twirl them around, and that's definitely more like me. My parents are all into it. And so Shane and Emily get out there and they do it. My mom's breaking it down, saying, pointers here or there, and looking at it like I watch a game. Like I will watch a pitcher or an offense move in football, maybe an offensive set in basketball, and say, "Oh, I see what they're doing there." I could see that she sees it so much differently than me. It was really interesting. But Shane was a good sport about it. Obviously, he's just. I've talked about this before. The fit for him and Gamecock football, like nobody else could pull that off. First of all, great name, right? Beamer Ball. We know what Beamer Ball has been to Virginia Tech and Frank and the whole thing, and then to call this the Beamer Ball, perfect, right? And to do it coming off the big bowl win, off of year number 1, improving from 2 wins to 7, great timing, capitalize on the enthusiasm for sure, continue that through the offseason. I mean, you add a guy like Spencer Rattler in the Oklahoma quarterback transfer and a big tight end in Austin Stogner and the receiver from James Madison and the running back from Wake Forest and the number 7 transfer class, I think, in the country, 4th in the SEC. Capitalizing on some momentum, smart move, and a really big time feel at the event, and be interested to see if this becomes a thing, if it gets copied at other programs. Have no idea. But it was to be at Williams-Brice Stadium in the middle of May, great night, and really interesting event too. There you go, York. Yep. Unrestricted and uncovered today, going with the no hat. I actually got a haircut over the weekend, so I feel like I can not wear a hat today. Also, having just gotten finished with 3 out of coaching 4 teams, 3 seasons out of 4, the hats are pretty much just all stinking right now. I gotta throw them in the wash. Just covered in sweat and let's see, I got one right here. Got the dirt and the whole thing. Yeah, not very presentable. So we'll go with the hair for the rest of the morning. But the Beamer Ball, interesting stuff and unique. And again, I will continue to preach this. And I'm sorry if you hear it from me too much and you say, man, be original, at least come up with a new take. But I think it is so vitally important for Gamecock football that Shane Beamer continues to carve out a unique place for it in college football, because it has not been that. With especially the last guy coming in and saying the loyalty lies with who signs the paycheck. And yes, the home field advantage at South Carolina is just as good as the other SEC schools. Well, it's logical, right? It made sense. And I think Will Muschamp was trying to be complimentary, but now seeing it from the Shane Beamer perspective, it felt awfully transactional. That relationship that he had as the University of South Carolina coach, but not that out of the ordinary coming off the Steve Spurrier era. Spurrier's a Florida guy. Not that different than coming off the Lou Holtz era. Notre Dame national champion, legend. But the way that Shane Beamer's approached this thing, and even with his last name, even with the Virginia Tech connections, right? Because he has been at so many other different places, most notably, most recently, Oklahoma and Georgia. But having had that connection with Carolina and the Steve Spurrier staff and the success of those teams, and certainly what he set up, what he helped lay the foundation for as he left the day that Jadeveon Clowney signed officially with the Gamecocks, being connected to that and then being able to kind of rekindle that, bring him back to his family and having his 2 older daughters born in Columbia. And then just to maybe show even Gamecock fans the uniqueness or how special the program is, as opposed to how similar it is to other SEC programs. I think that is massively important for Gamecock football moving forward. Now, you got to go win football games for sure. You got to continue to get really good players in, but I think that helps set the stage, lay a foundation that may not have ever been here before. Now, obviously, the Steve Spurrier era was massively successful, the most success that South Carolina football's ever seen, 3 straight top 10 seasons, doing it with in-state guys and Stephon Gilmore and Alshon Jeffrey and Jadeveon Clowney, Marcus Lattimore. That did create a special niche, I think, for South Carolina football, but it wasn't a unique one. It wasn't one that hadn't happened before because it was Steve Spurrier doing it in the SEC East and not at a championship level. Now, Shane Beamer has a long way to go to get to a championship level. Let's be very clear about that. And I think he would probably be the first one to tell you that. But you gotta set yourself apart in college football. And I think South Carolina is doing it right now. This is another example of doing something a little bit outside the box, moving forward. And I think the Gamecock football program overall, Shane Beamer specifically, deserves credit for it. There are a lot of people that help put that thing together, but it's something that is necessary, and I think can help Carolina take the next step in what is a massive challenge, especially in 2022, coming off of the Will Muschamp era, but to be competitive in the SEC, which will be changing very soon. And the word over the weekend, or the word continues to be, that the pods seem to be losing kind of steam or traction, and it will probably be, instead of official pods, it will be 3 permanent teams that you play. 3 permanent, you can call them rivals or whatever you want to, but 3 permanent opponents, and then 6 rotating opponents as the conference looks to expand to 9 conference games per year. And then that will roll everybody through on your schedule every 2 years, and then they would come to your stadium every 4 years. But instead of setting it up in specific pods, right, it would just be kind of 1 through 16 as the SEC standings are listed, and every school gets 3 permanent opponents. And so just because your permanent opponent is, if you're South Carolina, let's say Tennessee, that doesn't mean that those other 2 permanent opponents are the same ones. I mean, it can't be, I think, is the way that works, are going to be the ones that Tennessee plays, as opposed to the pod system where it would be, if that makes any kind of sense. And then the divisions and the pods, the way that's different is there's really no division champ in a pod thing, but that's just the way that you would kind of separate them. There's no way it's going to be fair again, and will be fascinating to see how this thing moves forward and what specific schools get paired with other specific schools, and then the reaction to it and the whole thing. But again, I think this is going to be better for college football, better for us as college football fans, SEC fans, because you're going to get the opportunity to go to other venues more often and see those schools come to you, have those fan bases come in. And to me, for those of you that have always been around in the SEC and made trips, and I mean, that's the best, right? The best part of the SEC, along with the ridiculously high level of football and caliber of player that rolls through, is the Saturday atmosphere or the weekend atmosphere. Then you can say, make it a weekend road trip, right? That you can get after it at each other during a game, but outside of that, there's Southern hospitality for the most part, welcome them in, try to beat the crap out of them, and then send them along their way. Look forward to go seeing them, right? Friendships are made. I know my dad has a bunch of buddies he's just run into. One from the state of Alabama pops up, right? Love football. You can identify with that mindset. Got so much in common, even though your teams might not be exactly the same. I think the mutual respect, the longtime SEC chants, it's just been a different type of league than any other league out there. You got maybe it's the Southern hospitality, maybe it's the tradition. I don't know what it is exactly, but it does make it unique and special. And I think this next step, oddly bringing Texas and Oklahoma into the SEC, which Doesn't make any sense geographically for the Southeastern Conference, much like Missouri or Texas A&M, but expanding the footprint out, I think will actually help strengthen kind of the regional ties, the intra-conference ties, because of the way they're going to end up changing the schedule. I assume they're going to end up that, and it seems to be like that's how it's going to happen. Hey, really appreciate you guys tuning into this thing, the live stream especially. Troy Jeffcoat in. Good to see you back, Tim. Missed you on the early game. Thanks, Troy. Good to be back for sure. Great talking to you guys. The more you can join in, the more fun I'm going to have on this show. The more you can spread the word, I think it's kind of maybe like what we were just talking about, right? The broader we can spread things out here, almost the tighter knit, I feel like the community, the show can become, because you start recognizing people's names or handles or avatars or whatever. You kind of understand their perspective they're coming from, and that can maybe help them earn your respect, if not your admiration. And even if you don't agree with their take, at least you can understand where they're coming from and get a good handle on that. So want to broaden out the conversation a little bit more from that, just because, we're not going to talk a lot of pro sports necessarily on this show. It's a sports-ish show. That's how we start this thing, from the sports lens, but doing it from the state of South Carolina's perspective. No pro sports here. But that doesn't mean that we don't love sports in general, and certainly understand and appreciate greatness. And that's what we got yesterday, man, on the pro sports spectrum. Game sevens all over the place. Overtime game sevens in the NHL. You guys I checked out the end of the Rangers game. I think I turned it on with a minute and a half left in the third period. So it wasn't appointment viewing. Don't get me wrong. I don't even know if I can name you a Rangers player. Eric Messier, not still on the Rangers as far as I know. Not a big hockey guy. Grew up in North Carolina. Went to a couple of ECHL games in high school, and that's about the extent of my hockey background. Have been to an NHL game, Dallas Stars in person. Would highly recommend it if you've never been to one in person. It is maybe it's because of my lack of background with it, but the one I appreciate, the sport I appreciate the most, being able to see in person versus watching on television. And maybe it's because and being a bit of a TV nerd too, I hate how the puck goes out of view in hockey. You guys know what I'm talking about? So the camera's always coming from the side, and if the puck goes on the near boards, you can't see it. You just can't. It just disappears. And then it's difficult, I think, for the untrained eye to follow the puck a lot. They tried the little the graphics, the moving graphics, getting it to kind of highlight and light up, and that didn't end up working from a TV standpoint. But that's not my biggest issue. I mean, sometimes it is hard to see these slap shots go flying through about 7 bodies, and that's kind of how the Rangers ended up winning yesterday. I don't think it was a slapper, but it was a tremendously well-placed shot through about 3 dudes, and I don't think the goalie could ever see it. It gets right inside the post for the Penguins, and bang, mayhem for all those Rangers fans. And I don't know about you, but as I was watching it, I mean, I loved it. And Trey says, fully agree there. They need a floating camera overhead. Well, that's an interesting idea. And I guess you can't just go to the opposite angle every time. Our brains would, I don't think we can process all of that as it's happening live. Maybe the overhead camera is the way to go. I'm guessing that would be tough, just all the motion. But watching the Rangers win and then celebrate yesterday, I couldn't help but think, hey, this is amazing. And I saw Tom Hart, who's on the SEC network, that you guys, if you don't know him by name, you would know him by voice. He's done a lot of Gamecock games, been on that Saturday night college football broadcast, done it with Jordan Rogers the last several years, I think. I think he's really good at his job of play-by-play, but he put something out on social media to just say new and old broadcasters take note of, I think it was Kenny Albert that was on the call of that game. and how he was quiet for 1 minute and 56 seconds afterwards. He said shot and goal, and then they just shut up and just let the place exploding tell the story, which was the exact right thing to do as a broadcasting nerd over here. Tom Hart put it perfectly, and that thing was captured so amazing. Like there was just a part of me that couldn't help but think, like, I understand it was a game 7, it was overtime, it's New York, but I was just wondering if there was even extra jubilation just because of the last 2+ years of what we've all gone through with the COVID stuff. I even saw in the post-game interviews the post-game reporter there, the sideline reporter, rinkside reporter, I guess, ice side. I don't know what they call it in hockey. But she was wearing a mask. It looked like everybody that was working down on the ground was wearing masks. And I couldn't help it but feel like maybe there was just some pent-up stuff being released, as well as just a pure joy from Rangers fans in a Game 7 in overtime, getting the big win there. I think it's the Rangers now moving on to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. Winner of that one, I believe, will go to the Stanley Cup Finals. And I think we might get another Game 7 tonight. I'll double check this for us. Tampa Bay and Toronto, I know we're playing in a Game 7. Double check that thing again. Not the hockey aficionado here. So that's why I could use your help for sure. And then you get, I see another headline for the weekend. It was the Drew Brees situation. Maybe we'll get into that as well. But the Game 7 stuff I bring up, I put it out on Twitter, and we got about an hour or so left. Try to get a conclusion of any kind of poll question I ask you so we can determine something on the show. What sport has the best Game 7? Who has the best Game 7s? Right now, the NHL is leading. They got 40% of the vote at Tim Hill UFA on Twitter. Second place right now with 27% of the vote. The option of all Game 7s are great. Major League Baseball, third right now with about 22% of the vote. The NBA at 11%. Speaking of the NBA, Game 7's there as well. Boston eliminates the Milwaukee Bucks. A great series. Not a huge NBA guy. But once the playoffs crank up, and especially you get a good series like these two teams, I'm a big fan of Giannis. Chris Middleton has the South Carolina connections there for the Bucks, winning the championship last year. Great story. Middleton hurt this year. Bucks still very much relevant, but clearly they missed him in this series, and Boston wins yesterday, eliminates them. But the notable game for multiple ways, and let me get in a comment here before we move on. R.L. Smith says, when watching hockey on TV, you have to look to where the puck is going, not where it is at. True. I'm with you. And is there a sport growing at the speed hockey is from a viewership standpoint? Trey, I don't know if those numbers are being supported from a viewership standpoint nationally. Possibly. I'll go check those. But at last check, man, the hockey numbers are, compared to other sports, are struggling. Now, maybe they're growing just because they bottomed out pretty good. And to had gone, and I guess they're on TBS now, Turner. At least had the game that I was watching yesterday with the Rangers. I know that they were on like CNBC at one point, or NBC Sports Network, which I don't even know if is a thing anymore. They've struggled to really find a home. And Troy, I think I'm kind of with you. I like hockey, just don't have a team I pull for like in the NFL or Major League Baseball. Yeah, with the Carolina Hurricanes coming so recently, I know it's been a while, but then being all the way up in Raleigh, and I don't think it translates to a lot of South Carolinians in a lot of ways. And then RL, I guess, was answering Trey's question with NASCAR. Those NASCAR numbers not growing either from a viewership standpoint, for sure. But back to the NBA Game 7. So you had Boston eliminate the Bucks. You had the other NBA finalist also playing in a Game 7, other NBA finalists from last year in the Phoenix Suns. And that had turned into quite the series with the Dallas Mavericks, mainly because of one little scene that is very popular on the social media with Devin Booker and Luka Doncic. And it was a bit of a dead ball. Doncic had the ball. He was raising it up, and Booker comes and grabs it, and they exchange some words. And since then, Luka Doncic just got that look. You know what I mean by that look? All the great ones have the look. And maybe it's in basketball that we see it the most, or maybe it's just where my head goes just because that's where Doncic is and is dominating. But it seems like such a mindset thing. My head will always go to Michael Jordan, but Kobe Bryant is right there as well. That fierceness in the eyes, I think, is the only way I know how to put it. Maybe the jutting of the jaw, some kind of like human male dominance trait that just happens. It's always happened, but you see it, and I think I saw it once yesterday from Luka. Like, it was a noticeable like jaw jutting out and clearly kind of flexing the dominance. And that thing was what, 30 points at half? They were playing in Phoenix, and the halftime score was Dallas 57, Phoenix 27. That's something. I mean, that was not a great game 7. Don't get me wrong. It was great by Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavs. And I think what happened yesterday, Doncic has been great basically his entire NBA career, right? Just a couple of years. Yeah, the pre-werewolf look. That's a good way to put it, York. It is that, right? It reminds me of Teen Wolf when he would turn in from human to a werewolf. That's just how my little elementary brain works. But Luka Doncic, I think, went from really, really good basketball player, very talented, and still a superstar. Yesterday, I think he went to the next level. He asserted his will in the series against a team that was supposed to beat them. From an underdog standpoint in the NBA, Phoenix had the home court advantage there. They won a bunch of games in the regular season, went to the NBA Finals last year, but they messed with the wrong dude, and he made them pay in a big way. And in my mind, that's what separates those guys, those one-name guys. And Luka is now one of them. Jan seems to be on board. Love the way he laughs after draining those buckets. What his line yesterday as he was coming into the locker room, I think, could be picked up by the camera saying, yeah, everybody's tough when they're up. Something like that. Whew, that's legendary, man. Instant legend. And if you haven't checked out Luka Doncic, I certainly recommend it. If you're kind of like me and not a big NBA fan, you need a reason to watch the NBA. I think that's where I'm at right now. Right? Haven't seen Bird and Magic, loved it. The Michael Jordan era, loved it. And then after that, losing my love for the NBA. But when Steph Curry and Klay Thompson were splash brothering it up and basically changing the game, they draw me in, especially in the playoffs. And now that Klay Thompson's back and they're moving on, yeah, I got no problem watching them play. That Boston-Milwaukee series, loved it. Just fierceness. That's what I love about sports in general, no matter what it is. And if that's missing, then I'm not going to go out of my way to check it out because I feel like I'm getting tricked a little bit. And the NBA regular season is that to me. 82 games is a lot of games, man. I'm not saying I blame those dudes. But I think that's why a lot of us are really drawn to college football, right? You get that every Saturday. You certainly don't get your team necessarily playing its best every Saturday, but usually it's not for a lack of effort. Sometimes we oversimplify it and we say, yeah, the other team wanted it more and clearly they didn't want it. Yeah, I guess to some extent, sometimes that does happen, but I don't think it happens normally. I don't think it happens. I think a lot of the time that's what we tell ourselves, or that's the oversimplified, easy narrative. But most of the times we see guys playing and giving everything they got, especially in football, right? Where it's so violent, the chance of injury is so high, so much is on the line in so many different ways. And we can feel that. Fans have so much invested in an SEC standpoint. And I'm not just talking about monetarily, I'm just talking about so much interest. And if you follow recruiting, especially, you've taken so much time out of your daily schedule. Maybe just talking about it. This brings up, I went to Benji Norton's funeral yesterday at Dutch Fork High School. And for those of you who don't know, Benji preceded me over at 107.5 The Game on the morning show. A noted Clemson fan at the home of the Gamecocks, and hosted that show along with Tommy Moody and the late, great Bob Shields. And Tommy was one of many who spoke yesterday. And the Carolina-Clemson rivalry came up, and just seeing that talked about, how it was talked about, as we were remembering a great guy in Benji Norton, honoring his life. A guy, man, you know how they're just those people who seem to have extra energy and a magnetism about their personalities. Benji's that guy. And so when I'm talking about what SEC football fans have invested, certainly a lot of Clemson fans are the same way. You don't have to be a member of the SEC to approach it in what I consider to be like an SEC manner. And certainly he was that. And just to have it talked about, one of his brothers came and spoke, and one of the last things he's talking about is how it's been 3,000 days since South Carolina beat Clemson in a football game. And obviously, Benji would have loved to hear that. Benji, I'm sure, did love to hear that, where he was taking in yesterday's service. Yeah, RL says, I heard Tommy ended up donning a Clemson hat in tribute. Yeah, that's how Tommy Moody kind of concluded his tribute to his buddy, longtime coworker in Benji Norton. He put on a Clemson hat, obviously a former Gamecock and big-time Gamecock. Agreed, Jason. But I mention all that just simply to try to explain, I guess, what I feel when I watch these Game 7s in pro sports is so much more the feeling that I'm attached to with college football specifically. And I think what we all love about it, the passion, the energy, the enthusiasm, the excitement, the electricity that's in the air. Man, there was this scene, and I rewound it for my wife, who was up with me when we were watching the end of this, when I was watching the end of that NHL game, the Rangers and Penguins. And after the Rangers score the goal, the guy who scored it skates on over, or finishes skating over to the boards, and then that's when they pile on him. And right there in the first row, which is, it's got to be the best view in sports, right? The first row in hockey. Now, I shouldn't say the best view, because I'm sure they are, when they go across the ice, you can't quite tell what's going on. I'm sure from simply a sight line standpoint, you should probably be about 35 rows up, maybe center ice. That's where you can see everything the best. But from an experience standpoint, that has got to be the best experience in all of sports, doesn't it? First row, Game 7, NHL playoffs, your home team playing, scores an overtime goal. And then I brought it up because as they go over to the ice, they're celebrating, fans right there. I would say a relatively typical hockey fan, and kind of looks like me, looked like a mid-40s white dude banging on the glass there, having a great time. And then it kept going a little bit to the side, and it looks like it's maybe a 10-year-old boy, and he's right there, the same thing. And it's almost like they were jumping on top of him. Like he was in on the celebration, and to see the pure joy, man. And maybe it's because I got a 9 and 7-year-old boys that are really into sports right now too. Or maybe it's because I was definitely that 10-year-old that's so invested, and to see that just pure joy, man. Then the whole place is going nuts for as long as it's going nuts. And again, a minute 56 seconds, they don't even say anything on the broadcast because they understand that words don't add to that moment. That would just be a clear injection of yourself as a broadcaster that it doesn't deserve to be there. Just respect the moment. They did, and they sat out and they just let it be, and it was amazing. And that's why Game 7 greatness, man. We're so glad to be back to that with full houses and in a place where I know we got a lot of problems in our country and in the real world and the whole thing. And we can discuss and go back and forth and have different perspectives on all those and the whole thing. But to not have sports then to use as an escape and a venue to get away from that for a little while, that was a sad place our country got to for a few months. And so glad it is back in, and I saw it in full force yesterday. Right? They were showing Penguins fans that were in the building just kind of decimated, and they just looked completely deflated in the whole thing. And then Rangers fans continuing to discuss and celebrate, and that had very little to do with real life, right? But just so pure in a lot of ways. And so I think I'm more appreciative of it now than I was before, just because it had always been there before, having had it taken away to a large degree with the COVID stuff. To have it back, man, yesterday, fantastic. RL says sports helped us get some normalcy back after 9/11 as well. No doubt, man. I mean, the George W. Bush first pitch back then, one of the great moments of his presidency, I think. Not one of the great sports moments, just one of the great moments. I mean, from a smaller standpoint, I was out in West Texas doing local sports, Abilene, Texas, and they played that Friday night. And we're very adamant about doing it not out of anything other than this is what we do. And we're not going to let that be taken. We're not going to let anyone take that away from us. And I found it to be kind of a respectful tribute at the time, as opposed to anything other than that. A statement of, hey, this is part of what makes us great. Well, it only makes more sense now to do it after tragedy and to allow everyone to take what they need from it. And that's obviously what sports is at its best. Craig, didn't Carolina play the first game after 9/11? They did, at Mississippi State, to start the college football season. One of the first teams, if not the first team, to fly after 9/11. That was the following Thursday, I think. It was a Thursday night game. And I think the games that I'm talking about that were out in West Texas, I believe, were the Friday before even. Not quite sure. I could go back and look that up, but that's off the top of my head. Colette weighing in for us old folks from the North, relating that excitement and feeling the 69 Mets. See, that's the thing, right? No matter the team, no matter the sport, I think we all have that significant one that maybe we experienced for the first time, or for whatever reason is special to us. I think, and so some Dallas fans, maybe just some NBA fans, there's probably a bunch of little kids out there who love basketball and kind of like Luka Doncic going into yesterday. And that might have cemented it, man. They might be Luka guys from now on. And I don't blame them. And hey, I might be one of those guys too at 44 years old. I am going to be more likely to watch Luka Doncic now after what he and his team did in a Game 7 to the defending Western Conference champs in their place than I was before. And physically talented and has always been that, right? But I think that's what I love to watch in the NBA especially, is those alphas take it to the next level, take their team to the next level, and to do it in the playoffs when we're all watching. And that can kind of get us back to full circle about Gamecock baseball, I think. Carolina taking 2 out of 3 from Kentucky over the weekend. Had the chance to sweep yesterday and missed out on it. Dropped to 12-5 in the SEC, 26-24 overall. And it's that overall record, man. That's just unfamiliar to Gamecock fans. 24 losses. I've seen it several times in the last handful, 6 to 7 years, where that just didn't happen for so long. Clemson's record at 32-20 overall, 10-16 in the ACC. But so those are 4 non-conference losses that Clemson has, whereas the Gamecocks have 9. I think that's the major difference right now, why Clemson is number 22 in the RPI and the Gamecocks sit at 69. That is a huge difference. And to me, this is a lot like the NCAA basketball tournament, where I have very little empathy or sympathy for the big time powerful 5 schools who don't get in as at-larges. They're on the bubble, off the bubble, and the whole thing, just because they get so many chances. It's a team like Furman last year. Got beat at the buzzer by Chattanooga. That were a buzzer beater away from punching their ticket. And they had a great season and just didn't get in because they don't play the big schools on their schedule. They can't beef up the RPI. So I got very little sympathy for those schools. Same thing here from the baseball standpoint. You lose 24 games. You play a 56-game schedule. It's hard to make the case that you deserve a spot to be in the NCAA tournament, I think. And especially knowing who a lot of those losses were to. Now, losses in the SEC, losses to Texas or Clemson, nothing, no shame in that. But it's the other ones that you have to take care of those. And what Trey Dyson was telling us a little bit earlier, how they've developed that in the North Greenville program and how baseball is tricky. Yeah, you're going to lose some of those games sometime. I go back to that 2000 season, the Gamecocks 50-6 in the regular season, and I'm pretty sure one of those losses was to Elon. I think they were still college at the time. They might have just turned to being Elon University. No, they're still at Elon College. My younger sister was the first one that could get the Elon University on the diploma, and I believe that was 2002. So, yeah, it happens sometimes. We've seen it in South Carolina basketball a bunch, right? Somebody comes in the non-conference portion of the schedule, and they'll pull an upset. And then the reaction from Frank Martin here in the last few years is like, yeah, these things happen in college basketball, and they absolutely do. But the frequency at which they happen is a big difference. And 9 non-conference losses this year for the Gamecocks going into tomorrow night's last non-conference game of the year. That's just way too many. Remember that second season, the Gamecocks won the national championship? They didn't lose any. 0 midweek losses. So they might have had a non-conference loss on the weekend somewhere, but I'm talking about midweek games. It was the next year. This is another great example of college baseball, right? That Carolina goes to Francis Marion when they're opening their stadium. They lose the game. So I'm not trying to tell you that it should be automatic and there's absolutely no excuse and it should never happen and the whole thing. But the frequency to which it has happened this year in the last several years, I think, is the area of main concern to a lot of Gamecock fans. That the program just doesn't have that aura, hasn't earned that reputation in the last several years that it did for so many years of being that next level program. And in a lot of ways, it was kind of destined to happen because you won 2 national championships and played for a third in a row, and you can't sustain that. But to not have gotten it back now 10 years later from the last College World Series trip is very disconcerting, I think. Troy says, why do you think Clemson's on the outside of the tourney with an RPI 22? I don't know that they are on the outside of the tourney there, Troy, but that's a very easy explanation. 10-16 in ACC play. And again, it's that, hey, you get a bunch of chances to prove that you're one of the better teams in college baseball. You have to take care of more of those opportunities than not. And Clemson hasn't in ACC play. Now, how much credit will the NCAA tournament give the ACC this year? Clearly a really good conference. And again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, warrennolan.com. You go and check out baseball RPIs right now from a conference standpoint, and ACC is number 1, SEC is number 2. You don't see that happen very often where the SEC isn't number 1. And man, the RPIs, those top schools are all up there still from the SEC standpoint. Let's see who all is at the top. You got Auburn way up there. Vandy is way up there. It's odd that the team that won the national championship last year in Mississippi State is all the way down at 105. I mean, that kind of just shows you what college baseball is in 2022 and certainly can be in the SEC. And I think you got to view that from the South Carolina standpoint. You got to understand it, but also got to understand year in and year out expectations and where is it headed now. But 32-20, 10-16 is where Clemson sits right now. They got Coastal Carolina coming in and then Boston College this weekend. I think if Clemson wins 3 out of those 4, they'll be at 35 wins for the season, right? 35-21. And then 12-17 in ACC play. Still doesn't look great if they just were to take 2 out of 3 against Boston College, I'm thinking. But I still think they'll get in the NCAA tournament. That RPI is overly important maybe in college baseball. We talked about it a little bit earlier, how the new trend is, hey, just cancel a game in the midweek if it's not going to help your RPI. That's what Texas A&M did. Yeah, and Troy saying top to bottom, the ACC is the best conference this year. I think it's kind of apples and oranges. Tennessee is clearly a ridiculously good team from the SEC perspective at the top. And when you get to the bottom, there's not a huge drop-off. I mean, when last year's national champs are the 13th team in your league right now, right? Maybe you put Missouri below them. Maybe you throw Kentucky in there, but I don't think so. I think Kentucky has a slightly better RPI than the Gamecocks. So, SEC, ACC baseball set up tremendously. Speaking of that, it reminded me of a great social media clip. If you haven't seen it over the weekend, or just a highlight maybe, former Gamecock Brendan Malone transferred to Oregon and got a little league home run is the best way to I've seen put. I think he slapped one down the right field line, tries to stretch it into a double. Looks like the throw kind of beats him there. He slides in, and the ball gets away from the second baseman, bounces towards first. Malone's heads up. He thinks he can make it to third. I believe the first baseman comes up throwing to third and throws it by the third baseman, and Malone comes in to score. Coaching 6 to 8 year olds on one team and 9 and 10 year olds on another team this past season. Seen that a few times. But to see it in major college baseball and to see it for a guy who came in with big-time expectations for Carolina baseball, dealt with a lot of injuries, and ended up trying to get a fresh start, now doing it at Oregon. That was good to see for Brendan Malone over the weekend. I recommend you checking out that highlight if you haven't. Again, Brendan Malone in Oregon. But wanted to put all this college baseball information up on the ticker on the visual portion of the show today, just to give you a good context. Like, for instance, what just passed by, Middle Tennessee has a 49 RPI, College of Charleston at 51. Middle Tennessee coached by longtime Ray Tanner assistant Jim Toman, and College of Charleston by fellow longtime assistant of Ray Tanner, Chad Holbrook. So those are examples of smaller programs who are winning a bunch of games and still able to keep that RPI way up there. How the NCAA tournament committee will look at them, that's a really interesting couple of interesting examples, and to see where they end up, if at all. You can't feel great about your chances if that's your number beside you right now, unless you're going to win your conference, get an automatic bid. Certainly, they seem both to be on that path. I think Middle Tennessee went to Houston this weekend and took out Rice. And the last score I saw was something like 17-1 or something ridiculous. And I'm old enough to remember back in the day when Trey Dyson was going to the College World Series, Trey, Rice used to be just absolutely filthy. I mean, just at the top of college baseball, and to see how Middle Tennessee and your buddy Jim Toman go over there and handle it to him, man. College baseball in 2022, I'm trying to say, is something, isn't it?
It really is. There's just a ton of great players out there. Coach Toman and Jerry Myers, both at Middle Tennessee State.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Coach Myers got back into the game this year, right?
He did. He was after he got done working at coaching at Carolina. I think he worked in the athletics department doing donations and stuff, fundraising. And I missed coaching. Coach Toman and Coach Myers had a great relationship, and they're trying to win some games down there at Middle Tennessee State. But yeah, Rice was like, they were so good. It was like Wichita State, Rice, Oklahoma State,
Arizona State,
of course, LSU.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Gamecocks came on the scene when Ray Tanner got to town. And, the people started talking about the Gamecocks a lot too. So that was fun.
People just didn't start talking about them. They started winning a bunch of games and then titles after that and the whole thing. Jason's in with the Go Crusaders. Everything's set up there at North Greenville right now. You guys got practice today? What's your schedule here?
Yeah, we got practice today, golf tournament tomorrow, and regional on Thursday. So
wait. That is not a typical schedule. Isn't this the time of the year where coaches really bear down and you got to say, hey, make sure we get all our work in, and then the reps mean extra more, and you guys got a golf tournament tomorrow?
Oh, trust me. We get our work in. But competing is half the battle, Tim. You got to learn how to compete. And so we competed everything, like I've been saying this whole time. Someone mentioned golf. I don't even know how we got on the topic of golf. Oh, just dugouts type stuff, and people talking about I can beat you in golf and I can beat you at golf. And of course, if Landon hears anyone say, I'm better at you at anything, he'll be like, okay, really? Let's prove it then. And so, I mean, it's that simple. We're going to have probably a light practice tomorrow, and then we've got, I think, 36 different guys and coaches going out to play in a golf tournament.
That's
tomorrow,
beautiful.
2 days before the regional.
Love it. And I'm glad you touched on the competing part, because I think that's where, a lot of us old dudes, maybe even if we didn't get to a high level like you did at the College World Series or pro ball or whatever, still, I mean, if you played any kind of level of sports, you can identify with the competing part. And from a fan standpoint, when your team doesn't compete like it can, that is the ultimately frustrating part. College baseball teams have started canceling games, Trey, at the end of the season because it didn't help them in the RPI. Texas A&M is the example I've been talking about on the show with Incarnate Word last week. Did you shake your head just upon hearing that? You with me on that one?
Oh, I'm definitely with you on that. But, I don't know the whole context of it, but if that's really what it was, then to me, that's just a kind of setting a bad example.
Well, first of all, let me explain then. Let me give you some context. So Jim Schlossnagle, longtime TCU coach, got hired over at Texas A&M this past year. This is his first year at Texas A&M. And he said, yeah, I'm not going to hide from it. The importance that college baseball puts on the RPI, it doesn't make sense for my program to play the game. And he's right. Right? I mean, you're a numbers guy. You're a use your brain and think rationally and go from A plus B can equal C. But from a competitive standpoint, I just see the equal sign crossed out in my head. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. So to me, this is more of a college baseball formula problem than it is anything else. I don't necessarily blame a smart coach for doing the smart thing for his program, protecting his program. I get that, but there's no way we can let this continue, is there, for the game of college baseball, for the good of it?
I mean, I try to be consistent with my my worldview and the way I think and act and stuff, and it just doesn't align, I guess, with my values, because where does it stop? Like, let's say they go out next game and Friday night game of the the first game of the SEC weekend, and they're down 10-0 or 15-0. Do they just forfeit the game at that point to save pitching? That's kind of the way I look at it. And it also, like, honoring your commitment, like, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know. We don't know everything. I know you presented it. I understand how you presented it, but I don't want to, like, try to throw anyone under the bus. But, like, if I get a chance to compete, at least I want my guys to know that we're never backing down from anything. I don't care if we lose and it crushes our RPI. Like, did we really belong in the postseason to begin with? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. Is it the smartest thing always? Probably not. But I just you made a commitment to play a game. Yeah, whatever. The team's not good. Yeah, you want to save your pitching. Yeah, I just don't look at it like that. If I get a chance to compete, I'm going to compete. I'm always going to be sending that message to the players. And like I said, if we lose that game to that team, do we really belong in the postseason in the first place?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and that kind of got into my rant about where your record is right now, where your RPI is right now. If you're a big time team and you played a bunch of other good teams, if you got losses stacked up, I don't feel bad for you if you don't make the NCAA tournament. I've always been like that in the basketball deal too, Trey. I always feel for those little schools that have an amazing record and get beat in their conference tournament, so they don't get the automatic bid and they get left out. They didn't get the chance. I think a lot of these schools would love to play Power 5 schools, but they're not going to put them on the schedule. It's one of those things. They got nothing to gain by it. So I'm with you about the NCAA tournament time. Either you're good enough or you're not. And you got 56 chances in the regular season to prove it. You got a conference tournament to prove it. You got to win games. It's very simple. Oh, what a
Yeah,
deep
I
nod.
agree. And plus, am I coming in well?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. It's also, too, more than just baseball to me. I mean, it's like you're in college. Like, what kind of message are you sending? And, like, when I watch, like, have you seen The Last Kingdom on Netflix?
I have not. Is that the UFC thing?
No, it's Uhtred of Bebbanburg. It's The Last Kingdom of, like, England back in the day. It's like a historical fiction, Vikings and stuff like that. It's a great show. Like, or Gladiator.
Of course. Great one.
Like, would the Gladiator cancel that game? No.
Are you not entertained? You just take out anyone that would suggest it.
Like, there's certain things you do. It's like certain values that you hold by, and you got a game on the schedule. It's a commitment. You go play the game. Simple.
It can be really simple that way. I agree. And I'm with you about the message you send your team. I think that is important. Now, you also got to know your team. And I'm guessing Schlossnagel knows his Texas A&M team a lot better than we know them. And maybe he thinks they're mature enough to handle it, or maybe there's some other extenuating circumstances. I think his former assistant coaches the Incarnate Word team that was on the schedule that they canceled too. So you're right. Maybe there's more details that would make more sense. But from the outside looking in, man, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sure there's more details. Maybe the other team didn't want to play, or maybe it was like weather or travel or something. But anyways, yeah, on the outside looking in, it definitely doesn't look like the right message to be sending to supposedly student athletes. Like, it's more than, at the end of the day, it's more than just wins and losses. It's building character, growing, maturing, carrying yourself in a professional way. I was listening to you talking about Beamer and versus Muschamp and their kind of take on this kind of the program. One being kind of non-personal and Beamer being more charismatic, like buying into the community a little bit more. And like Coach Tanner was so good at that. That's one thing I really learned from him was Coach Tanner was always so professional, and he knew that he wanted to win more than anybody, but he knew that it would take a little bit of time to kind of build it the way he wanted to. And in the meantime, as he was building up the program, he was also doing so many things in the community to make people want to care about the team. He was a great marketer, really, at the end of the day. And I think that, if you want to set yourself apart from all these other schools that have all these great players, and, you got to kind of do some things differently. And I know Coach Tanner did. He was always available to the media. He was always doing stuff, good things for the community, he and his wife. And he would always welcome people to practice, and anyone who cared about the program, he was going to care about them and make sure his players were thankful, for any of the support that we got. And, I see a lot of missed opportunities in the college game when it comes to that type of stuff. Like, you could be that old guy that's yeah, we're just going to go out there and play baseball and let our playing do the talking, which is great. And of course I'm for that. But you got to get other people involved, get other people excited about the program. The more people that are excited, the more support you get. It really does help out the overall program, and it helps out the individual players as well. The more people you can get to kind of buy into what you're doing. And that's one thing I learned from Coach Tanner. One thing I've kind of tried to carry with me in my professional career when it comes to coaching.
So does that mean you're all in on Shane Beamer right now? I would assume so, especially just knowing his personality. Well, you're a special teams kind of guy as well. You like to see things done a little differently than the old school, old fashioned methods. I think Shane kind of embodies that in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm an anti-special teams when it comes to punting, as you know.
Right.
I'm a pro special teams when it comes to onside kicking. Yes, the Beamer ball. What a great marketing strategy, right?
You mean the actual event over the weekend, or do you mean? Okay, yeah. I went. I was there. Why weren't you there, man? Why weren't you out there dancing it up?
I was out there probably watching a high school baseball game.
Okay, that makes sense. Good for you doing your job.
Yeah. But that's good. That type of stuff is good. It makes people think you're kind of a regular guy. You're not just some stern coach out there, bear brining your way to mediocre, 500 seasons in the SEC. You've got to have good. It's like political, really, if you think about it. You got to have goodwill, the goodwill of the people, to really get a program going in the right direction, I think.
Well, you either got to be that or you got to be Nick Saban, right? You got to be so good at the X's and O's, or so good at hiring other coaches who are really good at their game, or so dialed in that you got to do it that way. And I think we've seen enough Nick Saban assistants fail kind of outside of Kirby Smart right now to know that, hey, that's more the exception than the rule. But ultimately, you got to kind of be yourself. And I don't see Shane doing anything other than that. It just happens that Beamer ball works, right? And it works for him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's not, he's an individual, and he's got charisma, which I love, and I think we needed. And hopefully the players will start coming, and we'll get some really good players in there, and we'll start winning some games. But I do like his attitude. I like his positivity, and I like what he's doing within the community to hopefully build something special here at South Carolina.
Yeah, I think you were pretty spot on with your Muschamp take even early on. Just hearing
Thank you.
Some of the things in the press conference and the personality fit, you were dead on, man. So I'll give you credit there for your evaluation there. We'll see what happens in the Shane Beamer era, obviously, but seems to be off to a really good start. So let's transition then, Trey, from the college game that we're talking about to some of what went down in pro sports yesterday. Did you see any of the game sevens? I didn't watch any of them from start to finish, but man, I saw the New York Rangers win in overtime in the NHL, and that place went nuts. I saw flipped over, and it was already complete domination. Luka Doncic and the Mavs over the Suns. Saw the Celtics eliminate the Milwaukee Bucks. So both finalists last year from the NBA out. I know you're more of an NBA kind of guy. Game sevens. Do you choose the NBA as the sport that has the best Game 7, the NHL, Major League Baseball, or would you vote for all Game 7s are great? That's the big poll question today.
Since I got more involved in baseball coaching, I kind of stopped watching the NBA. I'm not going to lie. You know how much I love basketball, and I think those guys are the greatest. Besides professional wrestling, I think those guys, NBA players, are the greatest athletes in the world. The hockey, huge fan of hockey. Love the game. Love the idea of the penalty box. And I've said this before. The penalty box should be incorporated in more sports. Instead of fouling out, you should go to a penalty box in basketball. In baseball, if you're not playing the game the right way, or playing with not playing with integrity, or using too much pine tar, you should have to play with 8 guys for an inning or two. It would just make the game way more. It's just such a great, it's instant justice. That's what the penalty box is. And at the end of the day, all our souls, created by God, we crave justice. We want to see justice and instant justice, and the penalty box serves that purpose very well. That being said,
to continue that analogy, is that spending time in hell, or is that in purgatory? We're going the penalty box.
Well, me and Catholicism,
okay.
Okay. I mean, do we really want to go down that road?
No. My head, I just went to purgatory. I just wanted to know if that's how you saw it, or you see it as a couple minutes. You got to sit in time out in hell, and then you move. You can get back into.
The analogy to purgatory is it's a good analogy.
Okay.
But no, I wouldn't call it hell. I would just call it, you do the crime, you got to pay the fine or do the time.
Right. And Jeff points out it is called the sin bin, right? It is, in a lot of ways. It's perfect. I agree, man. So what are other examples in baseball? You said if you're not playing the game with integrity, what does that mean exactly in your idea of having a penalty box in baseball?
Okay. So let's say that you're a manager or whatever, and you're chirping a little too much, and you're doing some things that you're not supposed to do. Well, instead of ejecting the manager right away, penalize his team by sending one of the players into the penalty box.
Okay, so they have to play. It's a lot like soccer. They would have to play a man down.
That's a man down, and then if his spot came, you'd have to play with 8. You'd have to take away a fielder. So that's a more management strategy would go into it. And then if his spot came up in the order, he's out automatically.
Oh, an automatic out?
Automatic out if that particular player's spot came up in the order.
Gotcha.
But it's not just like in hockey. There's going to be minors and majors. So like a minor's a 1-inning penalty. A major would be a 2-inning penalty.
I love it. Instead of the fake ejection or the stupid warnings, right? The warnings are the worst. It's like offsetting penalties in football. What boggles my mind is a 5-yard penalty can offset with a 15-yard penalty. And I'm like, wait a second, man. Do we not understand how math works? That's not offsetting at all. Somebody's out 10 yards. That doesn't make any sense. That would make more sense to me if you have the minors and the majors. I need to hear more, Trey, because you're in the dugout these days, about what do you mean a manager chirping too much? How does this work? Because by the rules, you're not supposed to be able to argue balls and strikes at all.
Right. And we all know that you can technically argue balls and strikes. You're not supposed to argue balks either. But you're kind of allowed to do that too. It's one of the great things about baseball, honestly, is the interaction between the manager and the umpire. And that's one thing that if they do robo umpiring, it's going to take away a part of the game that has been around since the beginning of time, as far as baseball is concerned. And I'm not a fan of the robo umpiring at all.
Agreed.
But I don't know this, I'm talking about this and people are going to be like, man, Trey's crazy. He's an idiot and stuff like that.
Not what Jeff's saying. He's saying the beard is pulling intelligence out of your mind. I think that's a compliment.
That's Jeff. Yeah. It's just an idea. I mean, hey, I just like to have some fun out here. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And Troy says that's why I hate replay in baseball. Totally agreed, Troy. That should be, if it's not egregious, move on, man. There is human error, and you got to get over it, and you move on. Not everything is going to be perfect in life. And we see it so many times, right? When they try to just get down to the nanosecond with baseball replays, it's so ridiculous. ridiculous. And the game
Right.
is slow enough already. Let's go, move it on. I mean, even I think a lot of baseball people feel that way, Trey.
Exactly. And, so a couple of things I'm at least trying to instill in the players. It goes back to that Texas A&M thing you were saying before. It's like, I'm trying to grow the game of baseball when I'm out there coaching. One thing that kills the game, pickoff throws. Okay. You want to lose fans? Start picking over to first base 6 or 7 times. Okay. Is that good for the game? No. I do got to say, I'm kind of a fan of the shot clock, or I call it a shot clock, but it's a pitch clock. And the umpires, I will give them kind of credit. They tried to enforce it, but here's why I like the pitch clock in baseball is because if you get the right fans, this is where fans come into play. Remember when Karl Malone used to shoot free throws, Tim?
Sure. Talking to himself. Absolutely.
Okay. And Tim Duncan,
Yep.
I think he was the same way. Remember how Giannis, they take a long time to shoot free throws.
Right. And then the fans can get involved. I know you're a big
and
free
how many
throw
seconds? How many seconds are you allowed to take a free throw? 10 seconds. So think about pitching in baseball, okay? And I start counting like a ref. Okay, when I'm trying to get the people, like, of course I can't do it. I'm a coach, but you know how the refs are when they count like 5 seconds. So
Trey's moving his forearm just like he's counting it, like you handed the ball to the guy throwing it in basketball, right? And started counting to 5 seconds.
I've got a couple of kids that are really kind of eating up this stuff that I'm talking about, and I think you're supposed to get 20 seconds in for the pitch clock, and we'll start. I start letting them know kind of under my breath. They're at 13 here, 14, 15, 16. And try to get that loud. But if you get a crowd on board, and this is where I got big hopes and dreams, obviously, think about Founders Park with a whole crowd, counting out a shot clock like they used to when Karl Malone was taking free throws.
Fantastic. It reminds me of Texas A&M, right? With their Ball 5 chant that is just world famous now.
Right. Exactly. And there's so many different things you can do to kind of, it's all in fun at the end of the day. It's competitive, the competitive spirit, gamesmanship, but all this type of stuff is just something that baseball or really sport in general offers. You want to do it not in a malicious way, but in a fun way within the rules. And I love that stuff. I hear people saying, "Oh, the shot clock or the pitch clock or whatever, that's not baseball." And if you're bored watching the baseball, go find another sport. Yeah, I guess, but I can understand why certain kids who might like playing baseball might not want to watch it, because it does kind of present its issues when it comes to and I want kids to watch, I want kids watching baseball. So
sure. Well, I think it's also how just people react to change a lot of times, right? Some people, if anything changes, they're saying, "Oh no, this is the worst thing ever," and you're totally trying to mess with everything. Or how I think about it is, no, you're trying to improve something that's not perfect.
Right.
Baseball's not perfect. It's great, but it's not perfect. There are issues, and why wouldn't you try to make them better? But you're not for the over correction that you've seen. There's a minor league baseball clip out there where a guy takes a borderline pitch and kind of regathers himself and steps out for just a second and is right there in the box. And then all of a sudden the ump points at him and says, "You're out," because it took too long to get ready in the box. No warning, no nothing, right?
Did the kid throw the ball?
No.
Okay. No, I'm definitely not for that at all. Enlist the kid through the ball.
Right.
Then
No, it was like the pitcher was almost surprised that they went ahead and called him out, because he was maybe set, but he wasn't in emotion or anything else. And it was clearly not a delay that's outside the norm in baseball. And I get it, that if you want the norm to be different, maybe you have to make an example of someone. You got to speed things up. But this one was just such an overreach. And that's the other thing, though, with umpires, though. You're talking about the greatness that is the umpire coach / communication. That is great. But if you get a bad one, if you get a bad set of umpires, man, they can ruin a game real quick. And we've all seen that happen to certain degrees too, right?
Yeah, just depending on the cop you get when you get pulled over, good cops, bad cops, good umpires, bad umpires. Sometimes the authority kind of will get to certain guys' heads, and we certainly seen that. Yeah, it's been certainly interesting watching Landon deal with umpires this year. It's been certainly fun.
Well, I need a little bit
Okay,
more
still.
about that. Yeah, you're good. You're slight delay there, but we got you all right. A guy that is a former Major League
Okay.
Baseball catcher caught was it a perfect game or no hitter? It was a perfect game, wasn't it? Back in the day
Yep.
for the Oakland A's. And then dealing with Division II umpires. What do you mean it's been interesting? I imagine there's a bit of an intimidation factor from the umpire standpoint.
You know, that may be true.
Oh, you jinxed yourself.
He is very confident
You asked if he
with
was coming in well, and then it popped out on us a little bit. Let's see if we can get Trey to pop back in here. That's all part of the fun of an internet program, though. Sometimes you're absolutely perfect, and coming in bright and clear on the road like he was to begin with, and sometimes there's a glitch or two there. Appreciate your patience with us as we go, but I'm completely with Trey about the robot umps, right? That we all see in Major League Baseball now. They put the K zone up there. I love that. I love how they do it. And I'm also amazed at how good the umpires are by and large. 90+% of the time, they get it right. And these things are difficult to see, man. You see pictures in the velocity and the movement now. It is greater than it's ever been. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of end in sight. And still the umpires by and large get it right. And then they're dealing with the human beings and dealing with the chirping that Trey's talking about, dealing with guys getting in the box. The catcher might have an attitude or something like that. That's all part of the brilliance of baseball, man. I love that part. Now, that's also the part I can't stand to a large degree in basketball, when you get any kind of chirpy official or a guy who wants to make it about him. Ted Valentine. Like, hey, man, just officiate the game. And it's the hardest. There's no doubt. Being a basketball referee is the hardest job in sports because it's so physical especially at those high levels, big time college basketball and the NBA now. So physical and nearly impossible to be consistent on every play. But any guy that ever makes it about him, man, that is so difficult. And I feel like the older I get, maybe the more I get the sense of that, or how a crowd can have an effect on these guys that maybe they don't even consciously realize it, but they'll make a call that is about to elicit a massive cheer from the stands. And just as a human being, that has to feel good to know that you did something and the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. And there was a study not too long ago, several years ago, I think, across all of sports, and basketball was clearly the biggest home sport advantage because of the effect it had on the referees, on the specific calls more than anything else. And I guess you get that a little bit in the home plate umpire, but I feel like home plate umpires have to have such a thick skin. And maybe we'll talk more to David Smith, who we had on the program last week, who was a high school official, longtime South Carolina high school coach all over the place as well. But I feel like umpires, home plate guys, have to go into it. I feel like maybe even when you put the equipment on, you're putting on protection physically, right? Just from foul balls or balls that get by the catcher. But you got to feel like you're also putting on some armor to help you mentally get through a completely thankless job. You never, even on a strikeout, like maybe a home team strikeout, you'll hear the crowd cheer, but you absolutely know all that is geared towards the pitcher and not you. And that opposing dugout, if we're talking about a called third strike, is absolutely just mercilessly getting after you. Like Trey said, you're not supposed to be able to argue balls and strikes, but man, there are tremendous ways around that, right? You elicit the same emotional response, but you throw in a different word or two to make your argument that you're not arguing balls and strikes. Like, oh, I was talking to my player about his effort, and he really should have swung. We'll get more from Trey if he is able to pop back on here. There's specifics at the highest levels, but Troy agrees about basketball being a very hard sport to officiate. Said he did it in high school for 25 years. Good for you, Troy. Wow, that's a long time, man. And I mean, physically too, you got to mention that. And David brought that up, just how guys, when you get to a certain age or a certain physical state, you just can't move up and down the floor fast enough to get in good positions to make calls. So you got that challenge, first of all, that I wasn't even talking about. I was just talking about just the judgment calls, the constant judgment calls, the constant chirping in your ears from everybody that's so close to you, but especially the opposing head coach, right? Or the two coaches right there on the floor. They already have the relationship with you. That's one of the things that I loved about being close in so many college basketball games over the year, being a camera nerd, being able to be on the floor, is to hear the exact interaction between coaches and players, players and players, players and refs, coaches and refs, the whole thing. And I never will forget how stark it remains. What a vivid memory I have of Eddie Fogler and Billy Donovan going back and forth and just kind of orchestrating based on what the other coach was doing. If they brought in one guy, then the other one was going to bring in kind of the opposing guy to guard him immediately. And it was always back and forth. And there was just an electricity, a certain feel. You could feel the tension kind of between those two guys. And this was back, I think, when Fogler was accusing Donovan of recruiting issues. And they clearly were competing at the highest level, let's say. But yeah, basketball, so tough being an official. But also, it's part of the greatness of it too, man. That human element. That I guess I started this little rant on the robo the possibility of that happening. I just don't see how that will help grow the game. Kind of like what Trey's saying. To hear a beep, to know it's a strike, right? Or just to have the ump back there like they've done it before, and he basically is relaying the strike from the automation. That suspension of responsibility, right? That's what corporations do, like how they're structured. Like, oh, sorry, that's above my pay grade. You guys ever hear that ridiculous excuse? That's the worst, man. Let's vow on the show, anytime anyone mentions that one, to point it out. Maybe that one is the opposite of cut the gummy in half that G.A. Mangus brought up, and I think should be the unofficial show slogan. Well, the opposite of that one, which should absolutely not be the show slogan, is it's above my pay grade. It's just such a cop-out, right? Oh, nothing I can do about it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been there before. And I get it. But it's one of the reasons why I'm loving doing this show and loving directly going back and forth with you guys, because that's what it is. Very simple, pure. We talk about stuff. There's no levels of management to go through or red tape or anything like that. You want to say exactly what we want to say? Go right ahead. Also, the all over the map today is a great example. Gamecock lacrosse, I guess, bears repeating today. The club sport, we talked about it a little bit on Friday. They did end up winning their second straight national championship over the weekend against Georgia Tech. I think 11-9 was the final score, and that is about my level of expertise on that. But always good to see a national championship. My wife saw the sign for the 2017 national championship for Gamecock women's basketball as we were headed into the Beamer Ball the other day. She's like, didn't they just win it? It's like, yeah, but it might take a little while to get the sign updated. Get that thing going there on Bluff Road, is what my wife was telling me. But another national championship, be it a club sport, still awesome to have to be around champions for sure, to have that mindset. Got to see it back in 2010 for the first time with college baseball at South Carolina. And then obviously Don Staley has grown it since then. So to go from where we've gone all over the map was how I got off on this rant this morning. Little Division II baseball update from North Greenville being the number 1 seed in their region. And know where the Gamecocks sit after taking 2 out of 3 with Kentucky. Again, got the RPIs scrolling on the video portion of the program this morning on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. The Gamecocks sit at 69. Not where you want to be with 4 games left in the regular season, obviously. Taking on Charlotte tomorrow night, 75 RPI. And then at Florida over the weekend. Florida not been as good as they typically have been. That program taking a bit of a step back this year, but still really solid RPI numbers, I think. And a couple of games now ahead of the Gamecocks in the SEC standings. Carolina 12-15 would have to sweep in Gainesville to end up 500, 26-24 overall. And my big hot take on that is just those 9 non-conference wins, especially killing Carolina right now. It is, to me, what sets them apart in a lot of ways from other major programs who might be underachieving a little bit in conference play compared to years past. But a lot of them, like Clemson has 4 non-conference losses this year. 10-16 in the ACC, but 32-20 overall and a 22 RPI, which it doesn't have them sitting comfortably right now when it comes to the NCAA tournament, but certainly 22 versus 69 in the RPI is a massive difference. Then I'm looking at these RPI numbers scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Florida sitting at number 16. Virginia, who just took 2 out of 3 against Clemson, including a late night win last night, sitting at 15. And again, the ACC, from a conference standpoint, the number 1 conference in college baseball this year, according to Warren Nolan, from an RPI. Man, I didn't get to ask Trey. Maybe we'll have to do that next time about dance lessons and the whole thing. Mentioned Shane Beamer, part of the Beamer Ball. Was he and Emily having kind of a Beamer Ball version of the first dance and showing off the shag moves after one shag lesson, I think, for an hour? Dance lessons, man. I don't know if I've ever felt more uncomfortable, more out of place than dance lessons with my wife. I think we got them as a wedding gift or maybe a first anniversary present. I'm pretty sure that's when we got it. Could have been an engagement deal, but no. I think now that I think about it, it was definitely a wedding gift. And it gave me some comfort, I think, to see how the Beamers reacted to that as well. Very, very similarly. And good for them. Good sports, man, and is all part of, I think, again, who Shane is right now, why it's a great fit for the program. But you obviously got to win. And he understands it. He addressed the crowd Saturday night talking about off to a good start, but understanding 7 wins is not anyone's goal in the program. Now, that's not a different sentiment than what Will Muschamp was saying after year number 1, where he turned it around. And I will always say that 2016 season, right? That was Will Muschamp's first year. I think it was the best coaching job. I know they won more games the next year. They went from 6-7 to 9-4. And they won the Outback Bowl. But doing what he did in that relatively short period of time, now this was without the transfer portal, and the mess that it had become there at the end of the Spurrier era, knowing just the mindset shift that the players had to undergo, going from Steve Spurrier to Will Muschamp, going the ultimate gamer type personality from Spurrier to the ultimate preparation guy in Will Muschamp. Muschamp having coming off a pretty good season as an Auburn defensive coordinator the year after getting fired as the Florida head coach, knowing everything that he had to prove at that point. That was an impressive performance. And the quarterback issues they had to go through, Brandon McElwain and Perry Orth to Jake Bentley midway through the season, winning 4 out of their last 6 in the regular season. that was the most impressive year, in my opinion, the most impressive coaching job that season. What that was, I guess maybe the next year was when they beat NC State and Deebo Samuel started the season with the kickoff return. I think that's right. So just trying to put it into context, right? Coming off a really successful bowl win, Shane Beamer is 7-6 in year number one, riding some positive momentum out of that transfer portal. Spencer Rattler and Austin Stogner and Antoine Wells, Christian Beal-Smith. Those guys on paper look really, really good. Now you got to make it happen, right? And then you look at the schedule too. Certainly not going to be easy, and plenty of chances to capitalize. And to me, the massive question, obviously, especially coming off of last year, I was talking about Will Muschamp's quarterback issues in year number one, very similar to what we just saw with Shane Beamer. I ran into Zeb Nolan real quickly at that Beamer Ball on my way out. Just kind of reintroduced myself, said, yeah, you're the one that borrowed my driver when we played in the old Shane Beamer golf tournament. I think he might have vaguely remembered, probably not. He can hit the golf ball, by the way. But having seen him come in and the story that it was and the whole thing, seeing the other transfer come through and Jason Brown and win the Florida game how he did. Obviously, the Luke Doty injury and everything that entailed, to carry on Joyner coming in the bowl game and playing how he did. I mean, I think the further removed we get from that, the more we might end up appreciating it, especially if Spencer Rattler can come in and, I don't know what the word is. Maybe improve is the simple word. I was going to say stabilize or significantly improve. I'm not sure exactly the best way to put it, because the offensive numbers were not good last year. The reputation Spencer Rattler has coming in, I guess it might depend on if you're going more of where he was sitting this time last year and projecting towards, or more off of getting unseated as the starter last year and knowing that the transfer was kind of necessary for him. So how he meshes with Marcus Satterfield, again, I think is another big reason why a lot of this is unknown. There's so many question marks because Satterfield didn't come in like Mike Bobo or even Kurt Roper before him with SEC coordinating experience, a track record that fans can say, okay, the offense is going to look like this. We should expect this or that. And Shane Beamer, first-year head coach, same kind of deal. So if Spencer Rattler can come in and I guess maybe identify or solidify the offensive identity, help solidify the offensive identity of Marcus Satterfield and the Gamecocks, then we might be even more impressed by Shane Beamer and company pulling out 7 wins in that first season without a guy like Rattler, who is clearly massively talented. The Gamecocks have had some really, really talented quarterbacks in years past, though, that didn't turn out to be consistent producers. And then maybe the opposite, right? Connor Shaw under the radar recruited-wise. Dylan Thompson under the radar from a national recruiting standpoint. And then were really, really productive quarterbacks and winning quarterbacks. Won a lot of games. So year number 2 is going to be absolutely fascinating for Shane Beamer and company for so many reasons. But I think where Gamecock fans can take maybe the most confidence moving forward is a lot like where Clemson fans got to, I think. Maybe it probably wasn't at this point. Maybe it was at this point. I'm trying to go back and think of Dabo's career and then rewind a decade or so ago. And then doing it knowing that he was unproven as a head coach. See, he had the kind of the bonus of the interim time and having earned it on the field to some degree, as opposed to Shane Beamer, who comes in completely unproven as a head coach. But I'm just saying from a personality standpoint, how Dabo was such a good fit at Clemson. And I think that's where Gamecock fans can be encouraged and really optimistic in a different kind of way than they've ever been, and to a large degree. Certainly been in the last couple of decades, where that wasn't necessarily the case. Yeah, Steve Spurrier said that, he wants to stay at South Carolina. That Miami job popped up at one point, and his name got in the mix nationally, rumor mill wise, right? And that's when I think he put out the statement. This was, I want to say 07-ish, 08-ish, that no, he likes the people of South Carolina, and they like the same things that he likes, SEC football and NASCAR and country music. I mean, that is a kind of a really lukewarm endorsement, isn't it? Now that you look back on it and you see Shane Beamer talking about the uniqueness and maybe it's even more of a feel or just a timing thing with him getting his first head coaching job and everything that came along with it, him having to prove that he could be a head coach, and that even though he's Frank Beamer's son, he's going to do it his own way and the whole deal. So maybe it's more of that and less of a specific personality match. But I think him having proven that he can win games, first of all, and take the program to a 5-game improvement in year number 1, which is a massive improvement. And obviously, I mean, if you're going to go 5 games again, you're going to win 12 games. That's crazy talk, right? The opportunity to do that probably won't be there again. I think Shane would probably hope it's not going to be there again, right? If you can stay 7 and maybe go 8, 9, somewhere in there, build on the previous seasons. But the opportunity to continue to build the program into a unique place in college football. Unique place where people understand what South Carolina football is in its own way. I think that's really where we sit right now, with a lot on the line rolling into the next season for sure, that you got to keep improving the program. And that's a much more difficult sell if you're not winning more games year after year after year, right? That's a massive challenge that all SEC head coaches have. And I guess goes back to our Gamecock baseball conversation, right? 26-24, 24 losses in May with 4 to go. That's a number that we didn't see at Carolina for a lot of years, and has the Gamecocks in a outside looking in right now with the RPI of 69 headed into the final few games of the season. Again, Charlotte coming up tomorrow night, and then 3 games in Gainesville, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. All the SEC will move that last series back a day, started on Thursday, to get an extra day before the SEC tournament. So that's where Carolina baseball is. Enjoyed talking about that with you today. Man, I really like the idea that Trey brought up, and I appreciate Gamecock great, my buddy Trey Dyson, joining us via the road to start, and then from North Greenville, even if we had a technical glitch or two. Certainly great having him in here. Always love the outside the box stuff Trey comes up with, like a, no pun intended, but a penalty box in other sports outside of hockey. That'd be great. Again, a lot of times, how many games have you ever been to where someone gets ejected? Like, football is a great idea, right? The targeting ejections, sometimes by rule, I get it, you got to do it, but wouldn't it be a great happy medium to say, no, you got to sit out a quarter, right? Or no, your team next time, for the rest of this drive and the next drive, if you're a defensive player that gets called for targeting, and it's not a really egregious one where someone was really in ultimate peril, you say, all right, rest of this drive and the next drive, you guys are playing with 10. You're in the penalty box. I love it. And then there's just the idea of someone having to sit in the box and be kind of publicly humiliated. Maybe that's what it is. Everybody can just see you right there. Well, maybe in the hockey thing with the glass, and they're right there, and the game is going on right in front of you. All you got to do is open the door, or have the official open the door right in front of you, and you can go play and go have fun. We've all been there before, right? As kids, like, no, you had to sit out. And then to know it hurts your team and the whole thing, that'd be great. Instant justice. Love that. Love that idea. Credit Trey Dyson for that. I'm just hopping on, piling on. See you guys in the comments today. Really appreciate all the participation today. Anthony goes with a great show today. Side note, perfect hair today as well. Oh, thank you, Anthony. You're going to be my agent. Jan weighing in on the good stuff for the UFAs. Appreciate you guys being part of today's unrestricted free agent program as we're kicking off week number 3 here. Again, I got no idea where this thing's going to go. Just happy to be doing it with you and happy that you guys are making it better for sure. You made it better today with your comments. Feel free to spread the word and help the show grow even more. If you haven't, please subscribe to the YouTube page especially, and then I think you're supposed to like and comment and all that stuff. RL, thanks for all the participation. That'll wrap up the Monday edition in week number 3. Hey, tomorrow we're going to have some good stuff. I believe we're going to get a PGA Championship preview from former Gamecock golfer Meredith Taylor. Going to hear from new USC Hall of Famer Corey Miller as well. They're going to be up on the program tomorrow, so that should be a lot of fun. We'll be back live streaming 10 a.m. to noon every Monday through Friday. You can catch the podcast all kind of places after that. The audio version all over the place, Spotify and all kinds of other places. Rodney, I didn't dodge your question. Your question was about softball, I think, just because I didn't think a lot of people would be interested in the softball conversation. I guess so. Maybe I am answering why I dodged that question, but I think it was Troy maybe who answered it pretty well about South Carolina softball struggling and Clemson softball not. All massive controversy to end today's show. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you Tuesday, live streaming 10 a.m. to noon here on Tim Hill, Unrestricted Free Agent.